Hey friends, welcome back to another episode of Trade Stock. I'm your host, Justin White, and today I've got an extremely special guest from K&D Landscaping. Folks, I'm joined by Jeremy Ross here in the Trade Stock studio. We're doing this one in person here at the studio in Corlitas, and I'm so excited to bring this to you guys. We're going to jump right into the middle of our conversation. So before we do that, I want to give you a quick background. Jeremy Ross is the VP of Construction at K&D Landscaping. He's been with K&D for 8 years. He has built the design build high-end residential department from a small $200,000, $300,000 a year department to where they are today, finishing just shy of $7 million in 2025. Amazing, exciting, great growth, so much that we're building and so much to talk about. We're going to uncover labor variance, some of Jeremy's biggest challenges and biggest mistakes along the way. We're going to talk about the tools that we use and a whole bunch of other stuff. So stay tuned, get ready for an exciting episode. All right, let's dive in.
Josh and I came in with crazy ambition, but also, like, I think the biggest and first life lesson that we learned, I think with you too, was like, if you're going to grow fast, make sure you have a good plan. And you can't just go like, we're going to go big and like add a bunch of people without like knowing like what the sequence of events is going to be in order to catch it all. But I remember when we had those whiteboards that were in the old conference room, and me and Josh would sit in front of it, and we had all of our crews laid out in there, and then we're like, all right, let's add 2 more. And we added 2 more, but we didn't really have the infrastructure internally to support it. So it was just like all of a sudden we have 20 employees working out in the field, and we had 1 project manager and barely a supervisor.
Barely. And no like job costing or like really good analytics, in 2019 and 2020 before we brought on Aspire.
Yeah, we had no visualization. That was back when we had Hull residents in Scotts Valley.
Oh, gosh.
And we were working out of Dynascape, which no bash on Dynascape.
No,
but
it was a good program for estimating.
Yeah, at the time.
Just no job costing.
But it would have been like, okay, like if we're going to grow, we need a system that's going to support that size also.
How did we invoice back then?
We invoiced through QuickBooks.
Yeah, we just 20%. I think it was like that.
Yeah, it was. We had we could apply percentages to the scope lines in QuickBooks.
Yeah.
And that's what we did.
Wow. That was a different time, but it's interesting too is like as important as strategy is and having a plan, it's also important to have the belief that you can do something great. Because no matter how good your plan is, if you don't believe in your ability to grow a company, I think that's what holds so many people back. And I talk to people all the time that are stuck at 1, 2, 3 million in revenue, and they've been stuck there for 10 years. And then I look at our business as like 3 businesses in one. And so I just look at residential as like this $1 to $7 million journey over the last 8 years, I guess.
8 years.
8 years.
8 years.
And that's kind of awesome. Like a lot of people are trying to do that, and we just kind of did it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's funny that you say like that, because it is like, it was almost like blind ambition at the time.
Yeah. We had a lot of, and we still do have a lot of confidence in ourselves, with no real, no real data to back up the confidence, but that's okay.
Well, that's not entirely true. The growth has been good.
No, today we have a lot more data.
Yeah. I think that is probably the most important transition of the design build portion, though, was going from Dynascape to Aspire, because we did have the day-to-day analytics, which kind of helped us put the data to the ambition along with it.
So I feel like every few years there has been a cycle in design build where we have a good year, a good couple years, and then we have like a correction year. Like we got to fix some stuff and clean some stuff up. And whether it's labor variance that we figured out once we put Aspire into place, or getting the crews situated right, or trying to figure out how to dispatch properly, right? Like coming all from the yard versus direct report. Through that process, when we look back at it, I mean, what are some of the things that you have changed that has made the biggest impact on the business and on the team?
I think it's interesting to think about that, because as you grow, and I think that from your perspective as like a big business, like it's very similar, but you pick things that are going wrong and you take time to fix them, right? So it's like we had the labor variance issue. So we identified the labor variance issue, and we had to acknowledge that in the ways of fixing it, you have to be a little disruptive in the process. So you're going to shake the beehive and kind of like put it all out on the table and kind of like dishevel everything and mess it all up. And then you're going to pick all the good stuff that was in there and get rid of the bad stuff that was in there in the process. And while you're doing that, it can be a little bit not great to the bottom line, but I guess you know that you're making progressive steps in the right direction. And I think that it's that you're describing, where it's like you identify something and then you work on it, and while you work on it, then you become positive because it's now working, and then it works, and you're like, great, what's the next problem? And then you identify the next problem, and now you kind of like shake the beehive again, and you now have kind of a dip, and then you go back up. So I would say, like, I've never had a time where I felt like we were dipping in a negative, self-destructive way. But it definitely was like, this kind of hurts, but it's for a good reason. It's kind of like when you're working out and you're lifting too much weight.
Yeah.
You know, it's like it feels good, but it hurts. And then at the end of it, there's the benefits that you can see from it. So there was a lot of those. I would say probably 3 or 4 of those where it was labor variance, and then it was crew structure. That was a big one. And then process. Like the actual sales process was one. So it's like those 3 things alone, like those things can be really disruptive if you don't have them dialed.
I feel like labor variance is a topic that comes up constantly with us, with other companies. I mean, if there's one thing people listening can do in specifically a construction environment, it is to incentivize and build out radical clarity around labor variance.
Yeah.
But it's not as easy as it sounds. No. I mean, how hard has it been to train the team and educate the team on what labor variance even means? And are we there yet? Like, are we there yet? And we're going on 5 years of this training, but, maybe speak to how you've trained the team a little bit and the challenges that come with that when you introduce a complex metric like labor variance to a team that's mostly trained to do masonry and concrete and woodworking stuff.
Yeah. The beginning of that journey was probably the most painful, because I think it was the first problem we picked that we needed to fix. And laying all that stuff out on the table and then trying different angles with the guys, was really hard to do.
Yeah.
And some of them got certain portions of it, but not all of them, right? So there was a couple of different things that we would implement, and it'd be like, okay, 80% of them get it, but that 20, it just won't work. And then you have to kind of go back to the drawing board and do a couple of new things. But I do think that the one that kind of resonates the most with them was when we started really implementing the parking lot meetings. So we would review monthly what their estimated and actuals were, and just giving them really simple numbers, not overcomplicating things by trying to understand what the ratio is or what the percentage is, but knowing that, hey, you had 10 hours and you finished with 8, so you had 2 left over. Fantastic. That's good.
Yeah.
And or you had 10 hours, you finished with 12, you were plus 2, let's improve that next time, so that they can at least see it and recognize it and move forward. And then complementary to the parking lot meetings was the huddles, which it's huddle and parking lot. Parking lot's just a foreman and crew meeting. And then the huddles are the meetings that we're supposed to be having daily on site with our foreman and our supervisors, so that they can look at the analytics that are provided by Aspire daily. So each one has a custom dashboard for their project, and they can click into their project and see the estimated and actual. And we keep it really simple so that they just see those columns and they can see what was estimated and whether they're plus or minus that number right now. So simplifying
do they have
it.
iPads?
They all have iPads.
Okay.
So they all have it. So Aspire is really nice because it provides a dial, and you can customize the dial to have whatever information you want or whatever facing information. So on the dial, it has the labor variance, or it has the percentage of completion, or it has a material variance, whatever it is you want to have. Whatever the problem might be with the project, you might want to make that your priority.
Mm-hmm.
But then,
different projects, different priorities sometimes.
Yeah, different clients, different struggles, different, depending on the terrain, that might drive a force of certain implication. So, yeah, there's just different things that become important, and different foremen have different strengths. And you have to play to that, too. So that's another thing we learned in the labor variance side of things is some guys are really good at it. Some guys aren't. So you have to, the squeaky wheel gets the grease kind of situation. But some people can understand certain data, and some people understand different data. So we make sure that the guys that understand, it's custom to the foreman, custom to the project. And that's huge, so that they can all understand day to day what they are dealing with in the ways of labor variance. And we include labor variance and material so that they can see the positive and negative impact of both.
Do you feel like the incentive programs, which is all of our bonuses, are based on labor variance at K&D? Like everybody in the field, supervisors, project managers, like labor variance is the incentivizing factor. How big of a role does that play in getting the team to think about it on a regular basis, is having a bonus based around that metric?
I think it's pretty much everything. I wish California was better about that so we could incentivize more. But, I think that's
totally pay for performance is everything.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, the reason the guys are doing this is to pay for food for the family.
Yeah.
To pay for vacations for the family, to pay for clothes for school, to pay, we're providing for our families. That's the result we're looking for. And if you can get more by, visually seeing the result of that by working hard and getting a bonus for it, then absolutely. So I do think it helps quite a bit, and you can see the disappointment when we miss from time to time, and that should be acknowledged. Like we don't always hit the metrics. It's a really hard thing to do, and sometimes we set really aggressive goals, but I think the guys now more than ever understand the implications of these things, and the success of a project means the success of them.
Another question I get around labor variance is the alignment between the estimator and the crew leader, and the crew's putting the work in. How have you guys balanced that to make sure that when they get the job in Aspire assigned to them, that they're bought in, that the hours that are allocated to that job are appropriate for that job?
That's a moving target for sure.
I don't know if it's figured out.
But there's a handful of different things that we put into place so that at the very least there's an understanding of why that decision was made.
Okay, yeah.
And, excuse me. So our estimator and our project manager, supervisor, sometimes myself, depending on the size of the project, will sit down and do a pre-construction meeting in-house. And that's what we call the sit down and go over the data and all the numbers part of the pre-construction phase. So we all sit down in the war room and we bring it all up on the TV. We have the set of plans. We have the Aspire data, but we also have the takeoff and anything and everything that we can all look at together. And then we break down the project line by line. So it starts with demolition, moves on to grading, drainage, and then site prep stuff. And then we'll go into softscaping, hardscaping, all the other different stuff. And we go literally line by line. And then the supervisors and project managers can ask questions as they're going through and looking at the set of plans in comparison to the Aspire data that's getting won, really.
Yeah. Who's in this pre-con meeting?
That pre-con meeting will consist of... We try and get the foreman in, but sometimes it's hard to do because it depends on the size of the project, honestly. But we have project manager, supervisor, estimator, and myself at the very least. And again, for myself, it's just whether or not it's going to be worth the investment of time because it's,
you're doing 50, 60 projects a year.
Yeah. Exactly.
I mean, realistically, how many of those can you be in?
It's going to be the big ones. Yeah. So it provides an opportunity for the project manager and the supervisor to ask questions about what they're seeing. And then they have an on-site pre-con that is also included. And that's the one where we really try and get the foreman at that so that he can see the site and then he gets the analytics along with that. Now, that's the first phase. And they can ask questions, but there's really nothing that they can do to move things around at that point. So it is what it is. at this point, it's really like educating all these people in order to make better decisions down the road to improve our estimating process and improve our ability to buy in through construction.
Yeah.
So Rudy does have a KPI, and Rudy is our top estimator for residential design build.
Yeah. Shout out Rudy. He's crushing it, by the way.
He is crushing it.
2025 was a big year for him. Almost $5 million.
Yeah, very proud of Rudy. He's my little chick that we've grown.
Yeah.
So he's been with us since he got into the industry. So I'm very proud of the things that he's doing. So, and he improves and he learns, and he's very inquisitive and very proactive, which is fantastic. And you couldn't ask for more out of an employee.
Totally.
He has a KPI, key performance indicator, that he needs to make at least one site visit per. I'm not 100% sure what it is, but let's just say it's once per week, and he needs to go onto a job site, meet with a foreman, and check in with them on the scope of work, so that he can get feedback on what he estimated and how that progress is going.
Yeah.
So then he can go back and he can make adjustments mentally or in his SOPs or whatever it is, so that he can improve on his estimating in the future, and that's very important to us as a sales perspective, estimating perspective more so.
No, it's probably important too that the crew leader sees Rudy in the field and can give him direct feedback, and he's hungry looking for that feedback. I think that's part of our culture, whether it's our core values of humility and respect and teamwork, or it's our fundamentals, but we're always looking to say, how can we get better? And I think if an estimator is doing that actively, then the crew has less animosity when they make a mistake.
That's exactly it. And I think I was going to mention that is that Rudy's created this bond with the field where it's like it's so much harder for them to just point a finger at estimating and be like, that guy messed it up. He fucked everything for us.
How important is that Rudy is bilingual in that regard?
I think it's
not zero.
Right. It makes it significantly stronger for him. Yeah. I think any role that you can have that connection with the field crew is going to improve your abilities to produce for them and connect back and forth. So Rudy's ability to communicate with them at a higher level, it leaps and bounds differences.
So I want to ask you a question, because this is a data point that I was looking at this morning, and it jumps out. Of the last 8 years, since you came on board and took the leadership role of residential design build, you guys have grown every single year. Some years 30, 40%, some years 10%, 15%, but I mean, every year, double-digit growth for 8 years. I mean, that is incredible. Good job. I think we sometimes overlook that because we're so focused on like achieving our giant BHAG of becoming $1 billion company that we look at a 15% growth. We're like, all right, let's even go 30% next year. But is there anything that when you look back over the last 8 years, you guys have done to create this march and this relentless focus around growth?
Again, a loaded question. There's so many. I mean, I could talk about that for hours upon hours. Like, there's so many layers to this, right? But I think that if I was going to point a finger at one thing, culture.
Yeah.
Like, if you can control the culture and establish the narrative that you just mentioned, that like this is the goal, this is the result, this is where we're all going, and are we going to do it together as individuals, or are we going to do it together as a family? And I think that I instilled that with my team members from when they get hired with the company, but also from when we all started with the company to now. And it's like every single one, and I say this time and time again when I'm describing things, it's like, the movie 300, where it's like you have a person with a shield and a person with a spear, and you have to protect the person on your right and left. And that's how it is with our guys. They all look out for each other, and that's from myself down to the newest tradesman that's been hired. And they all look at each other as they can rely on them no matter who they're with in that day. And the small things, the simple things, the like showing up on time and the hitting the agenda for the day through the huddle that's been established at the beginning. Yeah. Those are the things that make it so that we can hit our end result. Because if we plan properly, doing the day-to-day tasks will eventually get you to the end result. And that's like what we try and push down is just like do the simple tasks well, because they were all put in place for a reason.
Yeah. Dang. I love that. And I also have to say, with the culture that you guys have created, of course, we're one big company, we're a big team, but each department has their own, kind of like semi-culture. And within that, you guys have achieved this level of retention that's like unmatched in our industry or our company. I mean, you look at commercial and you look at maintenance, our two other departments, we've had turnover at the top, we've had turnover in the middle, we've had turnover at the bottom. And then you look at, and that goes for both commercial and maintenance, nothing against that. And then you look at residential, you've been the leader through thick and thin. You've dealt with me for 8 years, which isn't easy. You've maintained your team in the middle with Josh and Jose and Jason adding on. You've maintained your team member Rudy through thick and thin. He's had his moments of wanting to maybe look at greener pastures, ultimately stayed through. And you've retained your team in the field. I mean, your crews, your foremen, your crew leaders are pretty much the same dudes, the same unit 6, 7, 8 years ago. And that's, I think, got to have some correlation to the fact that you guys have been able to grow year over year, because you're not like trying to restart and reinvent yourself every 6 months or every 18 months.
Yeah, definitely. I think that having the same people to carry the narrative, to preach the gospel, if you will,
It is,
yeah,
too.
I think that's, I was with Carlos this morning in Royal Oaks, and it's just that, like, I don't even have to say things, and he knows what I'm doing. Like, he's passively watching me with the clients in the background, and, like, we'll talk about a plant that needs to get moved 1 foot, and then, like, we'll go on to the next thing, and Carlos comes behind me and does it.
Yeah.
It's like, we don't have to, like, it's just, we know we're all in tune. Mm-hmm. And we all know what needs to be done, and we all know what's on the line. And I think that, especially with the foreman that you were kind of mentioning, is like there's 4 or 5 guys that have been with us since, for the 8 years. And as long as they all know what the result is that I'm looking for, that they in return will get, benefit from that as well, then we all do it together.
Yeah, and I think to that point, from my perspective, as a CEO perspective, I've struggled with letting go. Because as a CEO, you want to make sure, like, there's this, like, guilt that comes in. And as a department leader, too, is, like, you want to, like, go in and help. So you're like, oh, I'm doing my job, like, I'm useful. And I'm finding more and more, like, the more you support the leader and actually don't try to, like, put in your own ideas just because you feel like you should, better the company can do. And it's really like this really interesting, like, change. I think you and I have both kind of gone through this literally in the last 3 months, where the trust aspect and the ability to just, like, believe in one another, and then trying to get your story in line. Like, the story you tell yourself in your head is so important, because the data can be saying one thing, but I can be saying something different in my head. Like, oh man, we're really struggling. Like, we're about to fall. We're about to go negative. Like, we're going to lose clients. We're not going to keep our sales up. And those are all just, like, made up things in my head that I'm telling myself. And then I react to my own story. And I think when 2 different people's stories are not aligned, you may be thinking one thing, I may be thinking something else, and we're both acting differently and creating tension.
Yeah.
And then that is then translated down, whether we like it or not, it moves through the organization and creates tension at all levels.
Yeah. Well, but it's not just that. And I've thought a lot about this lately too, because it's really hard as a person in a leadership role to be self-reflective.
Yeah.
And it's really easy to point your finger in one direction, right? And I think that, you get defensive when you're attacked, but it's really hard in those moments to look in the other direction and realize that you're doing the same thing. And it's like, it's eye-opening to me in these situations, because I can now look and improve myself because of, the conversations that you and I need to have in order to make our division better as well. And now I realize that I need to instill more trust and ability into my project managers and estimating and design. And that's really hard to do. And it's like, it's really hard to be a hypocrite and say something one direction and then do the positive, the negative thing on the back end. So trying to round that all out as a leader is so hard to do. And it's like, it's so easy to point a finger again. And,
it is.
And like, you catch yourself doing it time and time again. It's just, I think personally, the greatest leaders will always do that. Mm-hmm. But the greatest leaders will also catch themselves in the act and then correct that path. And I think that's what makes real progress.
I like that. And that's so well said, because the best leaders in the world are not perfect.
No.
Although on social media and books.
It's depicted as so, right?
Yeah. Like you read a book about, whatever, Steve Jobs or Elon Musk or one of these massive business builders. Well, that's just like the highlights and sometimes the lowlights, but usually you're just seeing the highlights. Like these people go through these ups and downs just like we do. And I think when you're in the moment and you're going through a downwards turn, you then get so down on yourself, like, man, this isn't my destiny. I can't do this. I'm not good enough to do this. And I think that's why a lot of companies will grow and then they go back down, and then they grow and then they go back down, because you're living the same 6 months of your entire life over and over until you die. Yeah. And that sucks.
Yeah. But it's true.
Yeah.
And you see it happen to so many owner operators specifically. Yeah. But yeah, you see it happen all over the place, and so many books, so many Instagram posts, so many TikToks.
Yeah, it's everywhere now.
Like all you see is this amazing positive outcome, and nobody wants to talk about the emotional and stressful anxiety that comes along with it. And it's just real life, and you have to learn how to deal with it. And again, going back to the brothers in arms kind of thing, you have to have the right people with you in order to stay positive and move forward. And if you don't, then it becomes this just collateral damage, shit show.
So I want to keep this short and quick and to the point, so we'll start wrapping up. But I wanted to ask you, 3 years ago, we decided to bring design in-house instead of working with designers. Tell us a little bit about that decision and what you learned from that. And is that something you would recommend to other landscapers who are just strictly build companies today?
So we decided to bring design on because it's one of those things that as you're building bigger and bigger projects and you're seeing all the flaws that are in landscape architecture and design, that you feel like you can control that narrative better and you can do it better. And I think that was the initial idea behind it, right? I think not realizing inserting another company in a company. And again, I think that was definitely a life lesson too, right? I think we could have planned better for that. Could have had better systems and processes in place before bringing it on board. I'm ultimately very happy with the decision to do it, and I think I would do it again for sure. I might do it a little differently, but in all honesty, you're going to live and learn from situations like this. But the whole entire reason was to bring design on so that we could control the things that we're putting in the ground, so that we can control the materials that we're using, so that we can control having a designer that's putting together a plant palette that's for the ecosystem that's in that area, right? Yeah. As opposed to having somebody that's from LA designing something in Carmel Valley and they've never been there before, or they've been there 2 or 3 times, and it's they don't really understand how the growth patterns are and how certain things acclimate to areas. So that was the original plan. And there's been a lot of trials and tribulations along that road, but ultimately I think we're at a place now in our process and stuff that is actually really great. And what I've learned through this is that when you are selling a turnkey process where you go from design to end result with one partner, that it's so much simpler for the clients, and that's what they really love. And I think that's why we can control the dollar spent with that client and give them a value that's extremely important to them. Yes, they might be paying a little bit more, but it's because they literally have us next to them, guiding them through every single step of the way, and they feel secured and they feel supported and they feel that they're going to get the result that they want. And, granted, you have a handful of clients here and there that don't necessarily line up the perfect way, but I would say 9 out of 10 clients leave, extremely happy and proud that they got to work with K&D in the landscaping. And for me, as a person that's always wanted to be part of every bit of it and having a very design, a very artistic mindset, it now gives us the collaboration and the
All right, hey guys, welcome back. We had a little tech glitch. I mean, we're landscapers, not professional podcasters, so sometimes shit happens. Anyway, let's wrap it up, and then I think the last question I'm going to ask you, and I didn't prep you for this, is your trade secret. Because on Trade Stock, we ask everyone for a trade secret. So wrap it up, design. Design's a good thing to do. Be careful, be cautious. Maybe find a partner like Your Haven. That makes it so much easier. And go listen to the podcast with Derek from Your Haven if you want to learn about that. But Jerry, trade secret. You've been in it for a while, probably 20 plus years now in the industry.
Makes me feel old when you say it out loud.
It's okay. I'm with you, dude. We're not old.
No, I don't feel old.
Is there anything? I mean, there's a lot, but is there anything that comes to mind straight away when I say trade secret? Something you've learned through the hard.
My upbringing in this industry, I think the thing that made me who I am and where I'm at, I think, is in sales, and connecting with humans, and that's my answer is be human. Like, I think that there's too many people in our industry that are trying to put on a front or trying to put on a facade that is not them. And people can see right through it. And in sales, but also in landscaping, when you're after you've made the sale, still, you have to take trust from the beginning to the middle to the end. And it has to live through the whole entire thing. And if you ever break that trust in the process, then you're done. And the client's just I don't believe you. You're not going to be able to do it. You can no longer be the end result that I thought was going to be. And if you're not human, if you're not connecting with them in a real, genuine way, they're going to see through you, and then it's going to be hell to pay through the project. And just you'll never get sales. You'll just always be the person that's selling wolf tickets. Yeah. And I've learned through genuine connectivity with a human being that if they can see you for who you are, then they'll work with you through thick and thin.
So be yourself, not who you think your clients want to see.
I think that's a good way of saying it. Yeah. Don't be who your clients think they need. Be you, because if that's what they need, they will pick you.
Yep.
And if they pick something that's not, that's their expectation, and you're already selling it down the river. So the
totally
thing
agree.
that gets me, and that's with my employees too. I don't want to be fake. I want them to know who I am. I want them to know what the results are. I want them to know what the data is. I need them to understand that I'm here for them so that they can be there for me. Yeah. And that's a client. So client, employee, you just don't be genuine.
Be genuine.
Be genuine.
I totally agree with that. I used to try to hide my tattoos and wear long sleeves and stuff. I'm fuck that. I am who I am. And if you don't want to work with me, you don't need to. And it's done nothing but hurt me when I've tried to cover up my genuine personality.
Yeah.
So that's great advice, especially for young entrepreneurs coming up, trying to sell, trying to build their business. There's so much out there. Just be yourself, and then you don't have to constantly be fake. A lot of stress being fake too.
Yeah. I think one thing quickly that we did not touch base on was mistakes made in the past is chasing shiny objects.
Yeah. That's a good one.
You think that you want it all. I remember when I was young, I was I want every single project that there is in Santa Cruz County. I need them all.
$5,000, $500,000.
Yeah,
we'll
doesn't
take
matter.
it.
I'm going to be that guy. I'll be the Walmart or whatever. But then you quickly realize you can't.
Yeah.
It is impossible. And you can't be that person to anybody and everybody. You have to stay in your lane and specialize in what it is that you are and what it is you do. And that goes back to being the person that you are. You can't put on the facade that you are capable of doing the entire everything. It's no, we are good at this. This is what we do. We design at the beginning. We help you with your budget. We break ground in a very organized fashion. We keep that trust through the process of the project. We end strong with punch lists and communication with the client, and we create more clients that way. And that's who we are and what we do. And if that doesn't fit with your expectations, then that's fine. That's not us.
Yeah. And you got to do that from the beginning, I think.
Yeah.
I think we've often said you have to say yes to get to $1 million and say no to get to 10 million. I don't really believe that anymore. I think the more closely niched down you are and the more focused you are, the faster you're going to grow from day 0 or day 1,000.
That's true too.
So, dude, thanks for coming on the Trade Stock podcast.
It's fun.
All right, we'll have you back on and we'll learn more about those lessons.
I'm excited. Maybe I'll show my tattoos next time.
All right, later.
Thanks for tuning in to Trades Talk, where the next generation of disruptors comes to raise the bar. If you got value from today's episode, share it with someone in the trades who's ready to level up. For more tools, insights, and community, follow host Justin White and join the movement at jwhitegroup.com.